So welcome to this episode of the Estate and CX podcast. Today I'm with Gemma Noonon from the Gigs Group, Managing Director. This podcast is awesome for anyone out there who you might be a successful agent now and you're looking to change your business for the greater. We discuss the process and the systems and the whys and the hows behind that, and also Gemma's background and how she went from working at Harrods to operational director of a blue chip company to actually then working in an estate agency. So I hope you enjoy this episode. I've been wanting to get you on for some time off the back of even just a glimmer at recent estate and CX sort of sessions, and obviously dealing with you from a client's perspective in the group of people I always see on camera when doing coaching sessions. And you've got quite an interesting background, not necessarily from a estate agency. So hence why I wanted to get you on and also understand for the listeners out there some of the changes you've gone through being the managing director of the Gigs Group.
Yep.
And also the multiple different hats that you are probably involved with in the Gigs Group as well, from a leadership perspective. So over to you. So if you could kind of give listeners or the watchers out there, like, what was your journey leading up to ultimately going into estate agency? And it's probably not the normal one like, oh, I just felt like it or I fell into it.
Yeah, no. Well, weirdly, my mum was an estate agent.
Really?
So I guess it starts there in a way, because when people talk about old, estate agency, old-fashioned estate agency, I kind of get it because I was there, but I was there as like an 8-year-old child sticking the pictures on details and things like that, and just listening to my mum. And I think she probably was a massive inspiration on me, strong working woman. I remember she had a red Ford Escort, I think it was, company car. I mean, that's pretty cool when you're a little girl. So so that was first. And then getting into estate agency, working for Matt, was on the back of being a customer. So being someone who was desperately trying to sell her house because she was heavily pregnant with her second child and wanting to move out of a townhouse into kind of a more traditional house. And meeting Matt and kind of experiencing great estate agency, having been quite frustrated with, I guess, the succession. I'd kind of got to the point where I was multi-agency. And
wow. Okay. So
you're
in that territory.
So I was a great example of what not to do, I think.
So from like your perspective of, was that the first time you ever sold as well?
No, it wasn't actually.
So
so it's probably about the third time I was selling a house.
Yeah.
So I was just really disappointed. I probably had 3 estate agents, all promised me the world.
Yeah.
And all of them failed to deliver. And actually, Matt I couldn't go to Matt when I first put the house on the market or prior to that because he wasn't in the area. So he opened Gigs & Co. literally at the point where I was probably pulling my hair out and getting bigger. I contacted him, and I guess the rest is history in the sense that he just had a different way about him. Completely.
How did you know Matt then from that? Like, how did you...
So I think Matt was the year above my husband at school. So it was one of those, like I was aware of him. They knew each other. I'd probably been introduced to him once or twice, but didn't know him. And I did say to my husband, Matt's opened up his own estate agency. What do you think? Should I give him a call? And my husband said, yeah, he's a good guy. You should give him a call. So that was it was kind of like, right, okay. I had a good lead into the fact that I could trust him. Even Nikki, the lady that was working for him at the time, she was the first person that picked up the phone, answered my call. Brilliant experience with her. And so everything was just, and it was, probably it was a 4-bedroom townhouse on the market when there were a glut
of
townhouses on the market. So I knew my predicament, and Matt understood the other predicament, which was I wanted to move quite quickly, and was creative. He ended up selling the house to a brother and sister when the brother was looking for somewhere to live and also looking for somewhere to work. And he sold, well, actually, you could have your office on the top floor and, or you could have the top floor and have your, if you can't afford it, maybe you should think about buying with your sister.
Yeah.
So, just very, that was when I started to understand that Matt is needs focused. What are you trying to achieve? What are your timescales? and, you know, let's make it happen, and let's not just put your house on the market and hope and pray, you know. And some very honest feedback. You know, we had gallery walls, and, you know, we lived in our house and we had stuff all over the fridge, and, you know, and you're trying to sell the kind of concept of this kitchen with this big American style fridge freezer that you probably can't see because it's covered in, you know, kids' pictures. So he just gave some great feedback, and, you know, we took it off the market for a couple of weeks, took the feedback on board, did the things he said, and and I also ended up buying through him a house I hated the first time I looked at it. Where when I went back to look at it a second time with Matt, who wasn't with me the first time, I have to credit my mum there as well, though, because she came with me. I literally was like sandwiched between them on the driveway, being told why, you know, being challenged in a really positive way. It was very dated inside.
Yeah. So that usual superficial.
Yeah, and I would say I'm quite open-minded, and I think it was I'm going to be heavily pregnant when I move in.
Yeah, it works. Yeah. Stress.
So it wasn't necessarily what I was looking for. But again, great estate agency. You know, you can challenge your client. You know, you can ask great questions, and, you know, in a really positive and constructive way. You can really cut to the chase with someone, I think, and get them to really think about what their needs are. And, you know, there was a great example there of both my mum and Matt doing that for me. So I
remember a client of mine years ago. I helped to build up his portfolio, and one of the houses I knew he should have bought, well, he did buy, and he was like, no, it needs a little bit too much work. So I got his wife involved, and I said to Sarah, like, invite him into town, not knowing that we're about to go back to the place, and I'm going to be standing there with the keys, because you've got to get him to buy it. And she made him buy it, but I think it made him like 150 grand in about 10 months, 11 months of him purchasing it. So he's like, today, this is my best investment. So it does happen.
Yeah.
That's great. So like, but what, so even before that process, like, what's your background in, like, working wise before you even got into estate agency? Like, what?
Yeah, so
run down through that.
I was a HR person. Left school after A-levels, had no idea what I wanted to do, but was quite self-aware. I knew that I didn't want to go to university. I was kind of bored in a classroom environment, bored writing essays, kind of knew I didn't want any more of that. And I also was self-aware enough to know that I probably wasn't the sort that just wanted to go to get drunk every night and party. So I was quite interested in clothes and fashion. So I wrote to lots of magazines and department stores. And I got a letter from Harrods saying, hey, we have this career training scheme. They had a graduate scheme and a career one, which was for 16-year-olds, basically. No, not 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds. So you could go after you'd done your A-levels, you didn't need a degree. So I applied for that. And I was successful in getting a place. So that was my first year of work.
In Harrods?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. And there used to be older viewers will remember, in London, there used to be a pink paper called Loot, or the Loot. And I managed to pick up a bedroom in a house in Knightsbridge. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. House in Knightsbridge, or bedroom in Knightsbridge, at work in Harrods. Yeah. I mean, most people would be like, live with my mum and dad's, and I'm working at McDonald's at that age. Yeah. Or even just some receptionist job. So
yeah, so that was pretty cool. But Harrods was a very formal place to start your career. Yeah. You know, dress codes, a way of talking to customers. You had 3 seconds to acknowledge a customer coming into a department, or you had 3 rings to pick up the phone. And it was a great way to learn. Yeah. I probably grew up quite quickly in that scenario. And never actually, because I thought I'd make it into a buying department at some point and become a buyer in, I was quite open to what, but my first placement, because you went around doing placements, was training and development. I went and did a couple of other things, and then I ended up out of the distribution centre, and I was working in what was called the central ticketing office, which is where they put all the tickets and things on goods. They come in and then they go out to store, and that was interesting. But while I was there, because I'd enjoyed the training and development stuff, someone went off sick, I think, from the HR department. They said, we really need a HR assistant. Do you mind transferring into that role for a little while? And I think that's the first lesson for me that was like, if you're flexible, you will go far. Because if you just say yes to any opportunity that's given to you, it normally will lead to good things. And I did that, and they asked me to stay, and I never went back to the career training scheme. So I ended up doing 6 months in the HR team. I'm sure before that I had no concept of what HR was or did or anything like that. But loved it, really loved it.
What did you love most about it then?
I was, initially I was interested in employment law, but then I became more interested, I was still interested in anything kind of legal, but I became more interested in the human side of it. I became, as my career progressed, I could see the difference. HR's a bit like estate agency. Good, people either love estate agents or they hate them. And HR people are the same. And over the course of 18 years before I left, kind of working in standard HR, I learned that it's a really important function in a business, and it's about people, and it's about communication, and sometimes it's about being a conduit, between an organisation and an individual who's having a tough time or needs to, is going to hear a difficult message, or is finding something difficult, or a manager that's finding something difficult, and how valuable that role is. And I guess it's no surprise that I transitioned from that to wanting to study and become an executive coach, and doing that while I was a HR director.
Because HR can be quite, like you said, if it's not on the right scale and in that like no man's land between the two, and it's on the scale of like the corporation, that's when it doesn't really necessarily work or serve its purpose. So it's a great rise up from even from the starting job to be, but like you said, opportunities only come off the back of saying yes and exploring and open up to that. So like executive coaching, I know it and I completely get it, because everyone could be a coach out there in the industry or in the worldwide part to it. So everyone can be a coach. What, in that role of executive coaching, what's the fundamentals of being an executive coach to maybe say, I don't know, another type of coach that could be elements to it?
Yeah, it's funny. I wanted to understand more about coaching, because it's one of those things where I was reading books about coaching, and I kind of had an awareness of what coaches did. And I, through being I was in Cambridge, being, part of a HR network, and I could see lots of people going around doing coaching stuff. And I was thinking, I think I do that in my job. I think that's what I'm doing with the directors. And I think that's why I've kind of created this role, this European HR director role, because I listen, I ask questions, I challenge people, and if, when needed, I hold people accountable. And I kind of was starting to piece together that was kind of the fundamentals of being a coach, if that answers your question. And that was, when I started doing my coaching qualification, and we were asked, why are you here? I think that was the answer I gave, was like, I think I'm coaching people in the business, but I want to understand if that's the case, and I want to, and I want to add to my toolbox. I want to know, I want to be more confident in doing it. I want to know why I'm doing it. I want to know why it works, what doesn't work, and I want to kind of explore it.
Because I think those are natural skills or natural gifts that sometimes you have if you've got a particular mindset. But it's crafting it probably to like, how do you turn it from almost like a hobby into professional questioning, why you're doing that questioning, why you say those answers, what you're leading to do, what information you take back in, how do you process it, how you listen, all sorts of stuff. So and where did that lead from you? So going from European HR director, you said? So I
was working for a semiconductor company. So we designed microchips. It was a Taiwanese company, and I was there for 12 years. So I was there for a long time, and I'd joined them as a HR manager. Through a couple of organisations, I'd built myself into that role, and it was a growing organisation, and so we were opening offices in Europe. So had a ball of a time opening an office in Finland, for example, over the course of a couple of years, and it was at that point where the organisation probably wasn't going to get much bigger, the role probably wasn't going to get much bigger, and I started to think, how can I add value in other ways? And that was when I did my coaching qualification. which gave me the confidence to then start doing internal training. So rather than bringing trainers in, I started to think, I'm not a natural presenter. I'm not necessarily wanting to stand up in front of groups of people, but actually maybe I can. And that was a take myself out of my comfort zone. I went and did a how to facilitate training course, just to learn and pick and, like people say, beg, steal and borrow, and just kind of, learn what I needed to learn in order to do that. And then started running disc workshops. Because as an organisation we did disc, and it really bothered me that it was this thing, Taiwanese thing, where it was like, if you're going to be promoted to director level, you're going to do a disc report. And it's like, you're just going to do the disc report. And people would be like, right, okay, this disc report is in my inbox and it means nothing to me. And people would come to me and I'd be like, I don't know, but let me find out. Yeah. And that took me to then learning disc myself, and then a year later facilitating disc workshops. And everything I guess I've done is just through wanting to just scratch a bit further and unpick a bit more and kind of, learn. And yeah, so I got to the point where by the time Matt and I then started talking about working together, I was a HR director, I was a senior leader, I had this training and coaching facilitation skill, which he was thinking actually maybe he'd got to a point as an organisation that was kind of what, he wanted more of.
Is that the time where Gigs Group had, where they're at pretty much now with the other partners?
Yeah, exactly. So Matt had quite a big growth plan, and I think at that point he was of a mind, you could hire brilliant estate agents and help them to open up their own businesses. We've learned a lot about that process. But at that time, he was thinking, right, what if I could have someone in my organisation that had those people skills, but also I actually came in to start a coaching business with Matt. That was kind of like my what's in it for me was we're going to start this coaching business together. Matt's already got some clients. We're going to build it from there. We're going to do training. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And that was in March 2020.
Yeah.
And everyone knows what happened in March 2020. So
how many days into that before?
Well, so
I that training.
Before everything locked down. It's funny. I was supposed to be in Budapest the week of lockdown, and I was supposed to start in the Gigs Group the week after. So of course, Budapest got cancelled. My best friend and I had a backup plan, which was to go walking in the Peak District. Couldn't even do that because you weren't allowed to leave your county. So I said, well, I may as well just start work a week early then, and that, little did we know that my skills from an operational point of view, from a HR point of view, when you're, trying to figure out health and safety processes related to COVID, just what can you do when you're locked down as estate agents? That was kind of, and a furlough, funnily enough, I'd worked for an American company that had a furlough program. Wow. So I might have been one of the only people in the UK that actually knew what that word meant.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I've kind of been here before. But yeah, what, crazy time. And so I think it didn't take long before Matt said, actually, will you be my operations director? And that was, 3 years ago, which then led to January, him saying, I want you to take the lead now and be managing director, and I'm going to go and focus on other things.
Do his Matt style of random stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what tools do you reckon did you bring across? Because there must have been some phenomenal ones. If you go into a place like Finland and open up doing the office and doing the HR expansion, like I've been at a stage, I can probably say this, like you've gone from having background in Harrods, European director of a chip company, to then going, do you want to work in St. Nick's in an office? You know what I mean? Like, and like just do a estate agency. Yeah. Like most people would be wanting to go from a estate agency out to work in the likes of Harrods. So like, how is that transition for you personally?
Yeah, it's been, I guess because it didn't happen in a linear way, because it was supposed to be something else and then it became something else. Again, like I say, I am that flexible person. I truly believe that somewhere in, that things happen for a reason. And maybe this happened for a reason. And it's like you said, I think at the beginning, you know, why do companies that are successful go through change programs? It's probably because something isn't right, something's off kilter. And I think Matt will say this. We went to see Stephen Bartlett, The Diary of a CEO, and he talks about the fact that he'd sold his company for millions of pounds and he felt empty.
Yeah.
And there's something very intrinsic, very values-based in that. You know, it's sometimes people just, it's not about the money. It's not about the success. It's not about how many businesses you have. There is something, and it's values-based, I think. There is an achieved value and you just have to keep on achieving.
Yeah, I know that one.
Matt's got that. I've got that. And that's probably one of the reasons Matt and I work well together. But what he didn't have was he hadn't achieved the culture that he wanted in his organisation. And I think, again, things happen for a reason. One of the things I did to make that big decision to leave that big job was go and learn about values. And the lady that I'd done my coaching qualification with had happened to host a values workshop just at that point, and we'd done a bit of a quid pro quo. I'd gone to that workshop and and I'd done some disc with her, so we'd kind of like, you know, scratched each other's backs. And all of a sudden I'm thinking about values. I'm thinking, Matt, I think there's something in this. You know, the reason that you and I work together is values, and we went through a kind of ranking scientific process to establish that we have very similar values. And it's one that we use in the group now. It's one that I'm trained to facilitate. And where Matt maybe wasn't happy in maybe a business relationship that he had at the time or a management relationship that he had at the time, you could always track it back to values.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, one wasn't better than the other. One person, you know, we always say nobody's an arsehole. They just have different values.
Great point.
And it allows you to have a much more objective conversation with people than, you know, it's all, you know, you don't want to talk to people about their personality or the way that they do things necessarily, but actually DISC and values allow you just to realise that on some level we're all slightly different and we're all on a spectrum, and some people work well together and some people don't.
For the listeners out there, DISC.
What is DISC? So DISC is a behavioural system which is based on basically the idea that there are 4 quadrants, D, I, S and C, and it's about understanding that we all behave in different ways. So you can be heavy D, you can be heavy C, or, you know, I think I'm SIC, so I kind of fit around 3 quadrants of DISC. And again, it's about recognizing there's no right or wrong way to be. We're all just different. And, you know, even, you know, a D person needs summarized information. They want to make, you know, decisions quickly. A C person needs lots of information in order to make a decision and will be a lot slower going through any sort of change process. If you understand that, you can work with different people in different ways.
Yeah. And
people that do understand that and people that can flex in that way, in my experience, do very well.
Yeah, I know. My coaching side to it, when you have that analysing part to different people, you have to. You can't go 100% on that person because they just turn off and you won't ever see them again.
Exactly. Yeah. But also, you know, sometimes maybe you're not just not the right coach.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So. Really interesting time actually, because obviously you started in lockdown. Yeah. We had that whole like great resignation of everyone and people having issues within recruiting for members of staff. And I think a lot of it is value-based. Core values-based is a fundamental thing of why staff aren't happy. You're employing the wrong staff. We've been having that conversation before. Like you're employing maybe the wrong staff or staff aren't happy, and it comes down to that core and that culture. So what other tools do you think you've brought maybe from your experience into the gigs group that maybe some other owners could probably, or leaders could start to think about implementing a little bit more in their business? Like,
I think one thing we do fundamentally differently now is how we recruit. And I think it's, we recruit slowly. We get to know people. We try to embed them in our organisation as much as we can. I was talking to Matt from like June until I started working from him in March, you know, a long time. And and funnily enough, my experience going into the company, the big Taiwanese company, was exactly the same. Maybe not as long, but I spoke to about 10 of the directors across Europe and America before I made the decision to join that organisation. And I remember the recruiter saying to me, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Gemma, you're having to talk to another person. Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, bring it on." Like, the more people I can talk to, the more people that I can get a feel for what this organisation is looking for from their HR director, or it was HR manager at the time, the better this is going to be. I'm fine. And you can't necessarily recreate that, but you definitely can slow that process down. And we have this thing, which is when we interview someone, they're interviewing us. And you should, it should be like that. We shouldn't just sit back on our laurels and think that everyone wants to work for us. We have to set out what we provide. They have to set out what they will provide. And it is that psychological contract. If you're ever studying management, that's a big part of what you study. And I studied my HR qualification, so I kind of intrinsically knew that people come to work for a salary to provide a certain service. Most people, and you have to be clear what you're offering. And I think we're a lot better at that now, and a lot better at communicating what we expect as well. So I think slowing down the recruitment process. We do a values process. We get people to go online and do a ranking process. Good. We talk to them about what our core values are, and we look to see if there's an overlap.
Because rather than we do some viewings.
Yeah.
We work on a Saturday till like 3-4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Like some vendor feedback. Sell a couple of houses a month.
Yeah.
Here's your desk.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And then you wonder why you're down the line. You're like, I hate this person.
Yeah.
Like, why have we employed them?
Exactly.
It's so not in line with what we're about. And I've gone through quite a few managers over the year where you think, until you start to learn that, and you're like, that's why.
Yeah.
That's why. And it can ruin a brand as well if you get the wrong people sat in front of them. I've only been speaking to a client who sort of 4 or 5 years ago, he sort of stepped out of his business, put people in there, and it's sadly gone to that point where he's now having to step back into it. He's now starting to realise, actually, the reason why those people didn't represent who I was, and I just took my foot off the mark, but the values, the customer service, the experience, what I built my business around wasn't the same. So recruitment, I think especially in today's world, I remember I used to do a thing like I used to get recruitment process. So I used to get the person that we were getting in, sit in one of the reception rooms with the cover key members of staff.
Yes.
I used to get them to sit there for like 5 minutes and just I used to say to them, just chat to that person just so they could get an instance. So then those are the people who I knew were core value driven. So it was almost like a sounding board to say, like, guys, what do you think of it? Because equally, you need to make sure that you don't bring someone in that's not cohesive. So track forward from that to our relationship, Iceberg, Mark and Matt's like random relationship that Matt so kindly put on the last Sustainability X
I thought he was the devil.
With Mark, with a picture of devil and all sorts of stuff like that. So I remember meeting Mark, with Mark, I remember meeting Matt maybe 2019, maybe even 20. I don't know whether you were there at the time.
No, it would have been
just before that. I remember sitting in an office. We
that.
Came down. We took him he took us to the golf club. We had a chat there and about stuff, and then sort of that was it. And then he started to.
He actually gave me. You used to do black and glossy brochures, didn't you? He actually, one of the times we were talking about working together, he gave me all the glossy brochures and said, I've been talking to this guy. He's doing some really interesting stuff. I want you to take these away and look at them. I was like, okay. So that was my introduction to Iceberg Digital. But it didn't come to anything at that time, did it?
No, I think Matt was just seeing it. But I think going back to that part, I think like you've learned and like we've learned, like it's a lot of our clients, we go through it's a nurturing process, getting to understand and then going, actually, these guys align. And I think Matt was, I'd known Matt from watching a couple of his earlier videos he used to do on YouTube as an agent, and I met him at the Estas. And that was only my introduction, and then it was like just that talking online and stuff like that. So what from a change perspective, like you're very flexible in that, but you're probably come from, where did that come from anyway? What do you reckon that just lent into you go, do you know what, I'm gonna try this, I want to change this?
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I guess it's one of my values, right?
Yeah.
You know, I guess it's something. Maybe it's because I don't know. No, I honestly couldn't tell you. I just think that through my career, every time I was flexible, I was rewarded for it.
Yeah.
You know, one of my values is achieve, and that has always driven me to want to achieve beyond all else.
Yeah.
That makes me sound like a bit of a maniac, but I was not a massively confident young lady. I have done things in my career that 18-year-old Gemma would never have imagined she could have done because I've taken myself out of my comfort zone. And actually, I went to Knightsbridge to interview for a day at Harrods, 18 years old, on my own, on a tube train I'd never been on, you know, never done any of that stuff. Threw up in the train on the way home.
Wow.
That's how much
just full adrenaline.
Gave myself a migraine.
Done. Wow. Yeah. But then look what happened.
Yeah, but that you know, I will do that. I will take myself out of my comfort zone, and I believe, you know, I think maybe it's that psychological contract thing, right? You know, once I fundamentally understood that, sometimes stuff just needs to get done, and sometimes you've got to be the person to do it. And if it's the right thing for the organisation, and you know, not to say that people should be doing stuff they hate doing, or for long periods of time, people should be in jobs that they don't. Yeah. That's not what I'm saying. But just just being that flexible person that, you know, we're moving into a new office on Friday, and we got let down at the last minute by our furniture removal people. And so my husband's coming in to take the desks apart, and I'm building them with one of our new team members. And you just think, just needs to get done. Yeah.
I always say to my partner, Carol, problem's not solution. Solutions got problems.
Yeah.
If there's any problem, there's always a solution to it. So what's the solution we can create from it in any bad situation? Yeah. And the solution will always be greater than what you could just dwell on that problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the change part, what I find interesting with Gigs Group getting involved with us, and like having someone like you on board, it's quite refreshing to speak to. And obviously having someone like Matt, who probably like new thing here, like, you know, it's magpie syndrome. Matt's got that. Not to discredit Matt, but most people do.
It's brilliant, you know. I don't have it, and so we are the perfect kind of yin and yang.
Like visionary operator. Like he's like, I'm gonna go like this, and you're like, calm down. Like we're stay on this track. So, like a lot of agents that we speak to, or I've spoken to over the years, and even my old company we used to work before we went for a transition. Like if it's not broke, don't fix it. And like, we're okay. We seem to, like Gigs Group were reasonably obviously successful at the time, it's expanded out. So like then deciding to go, do you know what, we're going to completely transition all of our technology and move to something like Lifecycle. Like, what was the reasons that took place? Like if you're thinking, we're good, money's still coming in, so we don't really need to, like, that's what, you got that black booklet, like, what was the journey from that to then going, actually, we're going to press the button and go, these guys?
So, I think it was values-based, you know, again, coming back to values. And, you know, we were driven to provide great customer service. We were driven to help people and driven to provide people with information, you know, about the property market, about the service that we provided. And I'll never forget Mark's, you know, saying, you know, no one should receive a cold call from an estate agent. You know, you just don't need to do that anymore. And I was kind of hooked in by that. Okay, so what can we do differently, and how does this allow us to do it differently? I've implemented HR systems in organisations I've worked in before that are self-service HR systems. So from that point of view, I'm kind of like there.
That must be quite interesting, because you didn't have preconceived biases of like, I was an agent for 20 years and we've pick up the phone. That's the only way it's a measurable success. I've done 100 phone calls today. Don't know if I've got anything from it. We've called 100 people. So obviously not having that, you probably thought, this is a bit better way to...
Yeah, and I'm also thinking, if I went on the shop floor and was an estate agent today, I know sure as hell I do not want to be doing
it's horrendous, that. I remember those days, you think...
Yeah, that does not sound like a fun job to me. So if there's a better way, we have to explore that better way. Yeah, so, and there were just little things, for example, the interaction with being able to send out terms and conditions. We were trying to faff that in the background with online signatures and, and things, Adobe Sign and stuff like that. Well, here was a system that allowed you to send out terms and conditions and then track how many times they'd been opened with and know when to engage with people. That for me was like, yes, I want us to be doing that. Yeah.
And the transition from day go to where we are today, like, you can be honest as well.
Yeah. Well, so being honest, so Life Cycle did all these brilliant things, but it also wasn't designed to be a CRM. So there were lots of things it didn't do. And I knew, again, from project implementations that I'd done in the past, that it's good to get the crap out of the way, right? Like, it's good to know what's going to hurt and be honest about it. There is no point sugarcoating stuff because people will feel let down when it isn't all roses. So, why are we doing this? And I asked, amazing young lady that we have in our team, Natalia, who very good at using systems and knew our old system very well. I asked her to play with Life Cycle. Give me the list of what it does and what it doesn't do. And that what it didn't do, we sent to you guys because we were like, eventually, could you do these things? But what does it do that is in line with the mission, the vision about great customer service and about marketing and about not cold calling and all of that stuff, that we can focus on that so that every time we remember something it doesn't do or there's a pain point, we focus on the good stuff. It's not everyone will be able to connect this, but any women out there who have been through childbirth will know it's the worst, most excruciating pain you can go, but you know why you're doing it, right? And it's that thing. It's that if you can, any sort of pain or difficulty you go through in your life, if you can focus on why and,
100%.
what's going to what's going to come good out of the other side of it, the power of positive thinking, that massively helps people in a change situation. And and I've had to close down offices and I've had difficult conversations with people in the past, and just helping them to maybe not focus on that and focus on and that's hard, but in any way try and find what is it that this change is going to lead to that might otherwise not have happened.
Brilliant point. So I think without core values, without that vision, without the mission, ultimately where you want to go, but also not we just want to change CRM because we just want to, want to just change.
Want to mix it up.
Because I've learned in the part, the only time when I was an agent, we changed CRMs because the other one was being made redundant. And then we went to another one and I just think just the same old, it does the same old stuff. And then when we have people that come to us and go, it doesn't do this, it's like, but it does all this other stuff. Yeah. It's like, that doesn't exist. So what ultimately do you want? Do you want a system that does the same stuff, but then you don't change, and then you just implementing new systems that don't actually get you anywhere else, or do you want something that's a little bit different? So it's a great part to really pull across regards to the mission, especially when you talked about when we looked at delivering a better customer experience, and also for our staff well-being, going back to what you're trying to recruit, having that part to that. I didn't want a staff member sat there making 100 phone calls a day and feeling like that's what we're paid for, because that's what a time to do that. So, and how did from your perspective, it's not like you've just got a couple of team members and you've got one office. You've got multiple different leaders in multiple different places and multiple different team members.
Yeah.
How did that from Natalia going, it doesn't do all this, how did that get filtered out amongst the group? You can be honest about it. What did you need to do?
Communication. It's that first thing where before we signed the contract, all of the leaders had to agree that's what they wanted to do and had to have communicated that to their teams. We talked about what we wanted to do and how that was in line, with how 18 months before Matt and I had talked about the fact we were going to go on this culture change journey, after I'd come on board. And so it was a continuation of that. We are changing in line with mission, vision, values, and just keep reminding people of that. And again, I'm not afraid to say to people, look, we're doing this. If you can focus on the good things and be part of that change, then fantastic. If this isn't for you, then that's fine as well. But you probably need to go and work in a different estate agency or do a different job. And as it was, thank goodness, everyone came along on the journey because they believed.
But then you already had those from a coaching perspective, like some, when you look at it and you go, right, try and implement that change when cultures, either you've got no vision, you've got no mission, you've got no culture. And then also you've got high stress environments with staff members who are like so stressed that they're either sick, like asking them to go, right, we're going to have this change. Like there's limitations on their resilience left in their tank to go, I'm probably going to be resilient from this, like for the next 6 months, a year, whilst I get used to this sort of process or change of way. But if they've got nothing like that, then it doesn't start from the beginning.
Yeah, I just don't believe in that, hey, we're doing something new and it's all going to be great mindset, because it won't be. Change is never all great. There will always be bumps in the road. And if you're honest with people about that, hey guys, this is going to be tough. You're still doing as many appointments, you're still doing all of that stuff whilst learning a new system. This is not going to be easy. Can you keep at the back of your mind why we're doing this? Can you focus on the stuff the system does do rather than the stuff the system doesn't do? Can you recognise that this is the way forward? We're being modern. We're doing this for our clients. Can you keep all of that in mind? Yes, I can. Great. And that sounds really simple, but it kind of is simple. It is that just focusing on, back to the mission and the vision. And, when Matt and I coach clients, it's always about that. It's about, why. And with Matt, when he is being the magpie and he's off thinking about new things, I'm a lot stronger now in just saying to him, nope, sorry. The first year I worked with him, I probably went off on 5 or 6 different projects and got involved. And now I'm like, no, this is what I'm doing for us this year because we agreed this. This is in line with the mission. You go and fill your boots, but I'm focused here. And then, I'm not afraid to say, by the way, I think that's not a good idea.
Yeah, like everyone, I think we have the same, which is Hayley and Mark.
Yeah.
And she's like, I love Gemma. It's the same values. I think that part's
exactly.
I think everyone needs a Hayley or a Gemma to stop jumping between it. And I 100% get that because, like, especially with Mark and I've been working now with Mark 5 years now, and I think like futuristic thinkers and forward thinkers, you need that anchor sometimes to go back to going like, what?
But hang on, that thing you thought was a good idea 6 months ago still isn't implemented.
You've not done that. So I think that's a great point. So, and also like you think about like, we're talking about going into the future and seeing that, like, I think the values from my part is like, we've gone, right, this is what we're building out. You and even probably from you guys when you first joined us to where we're at now, some of the stuff that you guys probably thought we didn't have, like now Rox is now introducing, and we're just now speaking to our, like, if you hadn't given that faith and said like, oh, this is our mapped out bit, this is what we're in, and we some of that stuff, like you have, it's not like we're going to wake up today and go, right, we're going to create this new tool, it's going to be put in a system. Like some of the stuff we thought out 3 or 4 years ago, like we need X, Y, and Z before we get to this point. I think we're like with any mission, there has to be like stages, a bit like the rocket, isn't it? You need something massive to go off, and then it streamlines, and then you're landing on something with something small. And so
any change project doesn't happen overnight. We're still going through. A year ago we had a group day where we had rewritten our values. We've gone through a really detailed project to do that, and there is a tendency to think that's done, and we'll do this, and we'll embed it. And actually, just recently I realised we hadn't done enough, and we needed to go back round and and kind of see where we were a year later, and we needed to continue talking about it, and we needed to check in where people were, because some people are out there and they get it and they can recite it to me, and some people can't. And that shouldn't be a shock to me. It's not a shock to me, but sometimes you're so focused on the day-to-day that you just need to take a breath and think, right, okay, we're working on a different project at the moment, but where are we with what we've already implemented? Life cycle is going to continue to have new versions, and how do we make sure, unlike with our old CRM system, that we don't just get some initial training and then learn nothing more. There were a lot of things that the old CRM system did that we didn't know it did, because people didn't do the training and, you know, all the rest of it.
Especially when you've got like an evolution of staff.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
you lose.
That person leaves and it's like, well, I don't know, I use this bit. I train you on that, and then that next person, like, and you get to the point where you're left with this 5% usage of the system.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. That's the reason why I think a lot of the time we've implemented like ongoing training that new members of staff can jump on, people can do refreshers.
Yeah.
Like some of even the directors that I'm working with now, like, you know, you've gone through that and it's been reciprocated because those directors now get in touch with me going, right, Rob, like, I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah.
What's cracking? Let's look at the next strategy of what we're looking to do.
Yeah.
So it's brilliant. So, like, wrapping up on the last, I'd say at the end of this, what would you say, like, in all your experience, your 3 key takeaways that you would give to someone out there who's probably looking at maybe going on a journey of change?
I think be really clear why you're doing it is the first thing. That whole, you know, first ask why, Simon Sinek, you know, I think that applies to anything and everything. Be clear why you're doing it, because in the tough days, you'll always have that why to come back to. And if people need help along the journey, you'll have that why to come back to. So I think that massively. I think communicating, you know, talk to people, what's going to be good, what's going to be bad, open up that feedback channel, what's working, what isn't working, what's frustrating people, what are they enjoying, how can they share? We're constantly like, oh, that's brilliant, show your colleagues how to do it, you know, make sure that there's communication happening across the organisation, good and bad, and I think keep learning, you know, that is, and grateful that, you know, Lifecycle allows us to do that. You know, we can have coaching and we can, do you know what, even talking to you, even talking to Mark, you know, I wanted to talk to Mark about something recently that was outside of Lifecycle, but, you know, something that I knew was kind of in his wheelhouse. And it was, you know, spent an hour on a Zoom call with him and it really helped me. So there is, it sounds, you know, anyone that's in Lifecycle or looking at it from outside is thinking it's a bit of a cult. It kind of is. Because it is a group of like-minded people
pirates.
who all believe in the same thing. And, you know, I think that's really important. You don't find that very often in organisations. I've worked in so many companies where things have been implemented and they've died a death. Even values, you know, core values, here they are, they're on the wall, they're in the diary, they're everywhere, and yet no one knows what they are. And actually, and it comes back to point number 2, you just got to keep communicating.
Right, brilliant. I'm grateful for you coming on today, so it's been brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, it's been great.
Thanks for listening to this Estate Agency X podcast. Can you make sure that you're actually subscribed to this podcast channel if you liked the content? It helps us massively to get better guests and it just helps us generally. So you might think you're subscribed, but just have a double check whatever your podcast platform of preference is, that you're actually subscribed, and then that way we can continue to grow the channel and get better and better guests for you.